Dreadnoughts are a classic part of Warhammer 40k's universe, and today we're going to be ranking some of my favorites. While this isn't a top 10 sort of list, I love pretty much every Dreadnought model, so these are just kind of 10 ones that I really like and wanted to showcase. And first up, we have the Ironclad Dreadnought, released in 2009. This is an up-armored siege dreadnought, usually equipped with hurricane bolters, meltas, seismic hammers, or chain fists. And while this plastic kit came out in 2009, it's actually based on a much older kit from about 2004 from Forge World, as you can see here, with a bit more of a flat armor than the segmented armor we see on the 2009 version, as well as a more seismic hammer, than the kind of ridiculous one that the Ironclad has on his left arm. Overall, I just really like up-armored dreadnoughts, so it's natural that I'd really like this, and I have a soft spot for boxnaughts and hurricane bolters, so this is kind of a perfect one for me. It's just a really cool design, and I'd love to see a Redemptor version of this miniature come out, as he only went away at the start of 10th edition, so not that long ago, really. He's just overall a really cool dreadnought, in my opinion. I like seismic hammers, too. They're kind of crazy. At number 9, we have our first of the chapter-specific ones with the Grey Knights. This guy was released in 2003, and is what I like to call a helmet dreadnought, where instead of the sarcophagus, they usually have a enlarged helmet, especially from this era. Now, this is a unique dreadnought, not only in its design with the Grey Knights-esque helmet and collar protector, can't remember the name of it at the moment, but it is also equipped with a side cannon, which of course looks quite cool, and a big old force halberd on the left. Now, you Blood Angels fans might recognize some similarities to the old Librarian Dreadnought, and there definitely does seem to be something similar there. Overall, I really do quite like this. I also like the inset inscriptions and the giant tilting plate on his chest plate, shoulder guards. It's kind of hard to say with a Dreadnought. It's torso, I guess. And I generally, of course, like boxnaughts, and this one is just quite solid. It looks unique while still keeping that classic silhouette around. Moving on to number 8, we have actually a named character that I'm sure some of you will be familiar with. This is, of course, Brayarth Ashmantle, a very cool miniature released that is in a casta ferrum pattern that was forged by Vulcan himself. It contains the former 4th Company captain of the Salamanders, Brayarth Ashmantle, and is actually the original prototype for what would eventually become the Ironclad Dreadnought. He has siege claws and flamers mounted on his 2 hands, and is one of the most revered relics for the Salamanders, which is really saying something because they naturally revere their relics. I'd love to see this guy get a comeback of some sort, whether it just be a new model or perhaps a commemorative model, if not a full-fledged release, just because there's a lot of cool detail here. I do really like Salamanders, but they aren't my absolute favorite. That's why he's a little further down the list, but still, out of all the Dreadnoughts, if you're on this list, you're definitely one of my all-time favorites. I love that ginormous back banner, of course. Moving on to another green chapter of Space Marines, though this guy is not green, this is the Deathwing Dreadnought. Released in 2007 in Forge World Resin, this model is just really cool. I like the flowing tapestry, or perhaps tabards you could call it, on his shoulders, all of the embossed detail all over his armor. He is a helmet dreadnought with a bigger helmet than the smaller helmets we sometimes see. Excuse me. He's also equipped with a siege claw, which is always a fun weapon. I've always liked the 4-pronged shearing attack. I also like the detail on his leg guards. Overall, I think this is just a really cool miniature. That is something I'd really like to see also get an update, would be a new Deathwing Dreadnought. Because a lot of Dreadnoughts, of course, do end up in the Deathwing, or were in the Deathwing before they were put into the sarcophagus. And I would, again, just love to see this updated, and also in plastic. Just because, I don't really think anyone likes working with resin if they can work with plastic instead. Moving on, we're going back to a generic pick with a great kit that's still around, the Venerable Dreadnought, released in 2009. This guy is, of course, great. This allows you to make a very customized Dreadnought with close combat weapons of a few varieties, a lot of ranged weapons. Very cool embossed armor plating options for pretty much every section of him. You can give him either a sarcophagus or a helmet. This also lets you recreate the classic look of Davian Thule from Dawn of War 2, which is, of course, great, because Davian Thule is one of the coolest Space Marines ever. And I also quite like the scenic base he's on. Overall, this is just a great model that I definitely need to get a few of, just because, who knows how much longer he is for this world, because boxnaughts are definitely on their way out for the Loyalist Space Marines, though I think this guy actually has a good chance of sticking around for a while longer, given the fact that this is supposed to be an ancient relic of ancient relics of the Dreadnoughts, of course. Moving back into our chapter specific, we have one that I don't own at the moment, but I'm always happy to see, and that is, of course, Bjorn the Fell-Handed with his Fell Hand. This is, of course, the legendary Space Wolf that served alongside Leman Russ in his personal retinue, but was left behind when Leman Russ went into the warp, the reason which is still unknown. Equipped with an assault cannon is, of course, a winning thing for me. I love assault cannons. And also, just the detail here is fantastic. I don't think it's a controversial thing to say that this is probably, or at least was, the best Space Wolf miniature until their recent range refresh, where I'd say Logan Grimnar perhaps overtook him. This is still, of course, one of the greatest Space Wolves models of all time, as was his classic incarnation, which is, of course, going made for order sometime relatively soon. He was released in 2014, along with a few other Space Wolves releases, and still looks great to this very day. He also has a few options for his ranged weapon, though I always prefer the assault cannon personally. Moving on to number 4, we have a bit more of a modern Dreadnought, and that is, of course, the absolute stone-cold classic of the Redemptor. This really applies to all the Redemptor chassis, but I think this is just a great update or new version of the classic boxnaught design. It's a little bit more angular, a little taller. He has actual legs now instead of the old stumps, which I do like stumps. Weaponry-wise, very cool. The Onslaught Gatling Cannon just looks awesome, as does the Plasma Eradicator. I also quite like the chest-mounted combi bolters, and even the Icarus rocket pod on top. The Giant Fist is, of course, quite cool, and the Underslung Gatling Cannon is awesome. That is one thing I really appreciate that the Primaris Marines brought along, is just a lot more Gatling Cannons, or Gatling Guns, or miniguns, whatever you want to call them, because they're really cool, and I like including them. Even though I usually do run this guy with Plasma, I always magnetize the Gatling Cannon for fun, really. Moving on to number 3, we are getting a little bit traitorous here with, of course, the Alpha Legion Contemptor for the Horus Heresy. Now, this is, in my opinion, the best Contemptor Dreadnought of the 18 Legion-specific ones they released. It's just a really good culmination of Alpha Legion heraldry with all of the, of course, multi-headed dragons, the chained A's. All of it is just fantastic. And, of course, Contemptors do look quite nice, so I'm a big fan there. Of course, this model did go into a bit of a different path where it unfortunately lost its arms and legs, but did get to keep its egg chassis to be put onto any Contemptor of your choice. Really, I think this thing will always look fantastic. It's definitely one of my all-time favorites, though it didn't quite make the top spot. There's a couple other traitorous Dreadnoughts that I wanted to rank a little bit above it, even though, again, this is still one of my all-time favorite miniatures, and one I definitely want to pick up at some point, though he is pretty expensive these days. Moving on, we have a White Whale from an army I don't even collect. That will be the Death Guard Dreadnought, released in 2009. This Forge World classic is just a fantastic miniature. From the very grotesque boils and wrought armor all over it to the cool single-horned helmet that the Death Guard were going for at the time. This is just a fantastic model alongside the giant back banner. I would take this model over any of the current Death Guard models. It leads into a lot more body horror and disgust than you see with the current ones with that horribly deformed Power Claw or Dreadnought close combat weapon. And then, of course, you can equip its other arm with whatever you truly want. But this is a model I definitely want to get, though he is pretty rare as he's an old Forge World kit, so finding him unpainted is especially difficult. So we might have to delve into unsavory websites, so to say, to get this one. And pairing with him at our number 1 spot, we have another Forge World classic, the Alpha Legion Boxnaught. This got released in 2004 along with Chaos Dreadnoughts for all the Legions, and he looks fantastic. Now, he is an interesting hybrid of sarcophagus and a helmet knot, because his helmet is just so huge. I do quite like the shaping of the helmet. I like the the Hydra heads on his chest armor, I suppose, as well as just the general design here. Does this guy deserve number 1 over a lot of the other ones? Probably not, but this is more so my personal bias coming in, because as I'm sure you're all aware, I'm a huge Alpha Legion fan, and, Alpha Legion didn't get models for a long time, and this guy was one of the very few exclusive Alpha Legion models. And again, this one is another white whale for me. He's very, very hard to come by, at least officially. I would like to have him in official resin, just because it's such a classic model that you don't really see very often, so I'd love to run this in all my armies. Anyways, I'll see you all next time. I've been Spoons Rattling. Bye-bye.